when we were putting this whole panel together, I said, really, we need to touch into the financing side of it. How possible is it? What are some of the signs we need to watch for as when financing might come back? And Andy was my first and only call, and fortunately enough, after trying to pin him down for quite some time, I got him to commit, and he's here today. So, Andy, I know you had mentioned you might want to speak from the podium. Do you want to speak at the podium, or you're comfortable there? Okay. With that, I give you Andy Elfmont.
I've had vocal cord surgery, so if I get a little craggly here, give me a break, okay? I won't be able to compete with Peter. I used to talk like that before the vocal cord, but now I have to slow it down a little bit. So this is sort of a new model for people who know me. But as Peter alluded to, I started in the business at the same time that another great crash took place, which was the crash of 1971-72, when interest rates went to 12, and everything stopped. And they were building condominiums at that time, and I had these commitments from banks, and lo and behold, REITs, excuse me, and even REITs at banks, and they all walked. They didn't get built, those projects. And then they were taking all the lessons from there. Now, so with that knowledge that I learned back then, when the second boom came, then there was the third boom, we came into this recent boom. And this one, the lenders, what was interesting about this one is that the lending institutions thought that they had finally really arrived at the formula to make these deals work. And the formula basically, well, you could break it down into high-rise and mid-rise, low-rise, but in effect, they thought they learned that condominiums are a very tricky business, that the demand for the units can evaporate overnight, that you can end up with construction problems, that the law concerning contracts and this and that. And a lot of that stuff they felt that they were going to address. Okay, so that when this whole thing started to crank up in around 1999, 2000, 2001, is when I started to see that this new groups of lenders, you could talk to banks, et cetera, and they really thought they had the formula. And at that time, I think everybody pretty well knows the formula. It boiled down to the cash equity was going to solve the problem of having the building be built, that was going to create the developer to keep them in the deal. Did the guy have a track record? Does he know how to build the building, particularly with the high rises? Pre-sales, they had established with the law that you could register with HUD so that you could not run into the time frame of 5 to 6 years, what it was, 24 months or something, 2 years, so now they could go 6, 7 years. Also that the law actually got rewritten by the boys over at Greenberg Traurig, that the provision got cleaned up, which was that you can cancel the contract if there was material and both adverse changes. Everybody thought they had a handle on what that was all about. Escrow deposits could be used for construction, and you didn't have to give back $1. And I actually can't tell you that during this whole period of time that I financed all these projects, and I'll go into that, there wasn't one lawyer or anybody that ever told the bank who had asked for it, are these things going to have to be paid back? And absolutely not. Lo and behold, we all saw now that the 5% out of the woodwork has to be paid back. And so against this, they felt like they had the magic formula. We have pre-sales, we can use the deposits if we want, we have cash in the deal, we have the escrows, we have this, we have that, and that became the formula. And every bank thought, and every institution that was doing this lending, they thought that they really had the formula down. And so I went out and said, this is going to be a big tsunami coming at us. And it was time to, get out there and start cranking on that wave. And what I did is I sort of specialized in developers that were new to the game, that had financial backing. In some cases they were foreigners, Argentinians, etc. But in other words, developers that didn't know how to build, had financial capacity, and then the market and the product would take care of itself, because you put a sign up and they do the first weekend, they sell $100 million worth of deals. And I was able to roll with this program over a 5-6 year period of time, one major deal after another major deal. And then it just seemed like it got to be more and more, whereas they had a developer group that had a group of investors that were putting into the cash, and then the mezzanine market got created for this. And I never forget, I kept hearing this word mezzanine, and the only thing I could think of is the place at the movie theater where I grew up. And we used to go up there and smoke cigarettes back in those days, and that was the mezzanine at the theater. So I called up my friend, the Prudential, and I said, I hate to ask you this question, what does it mean, mezzanine? Well, that's the layer of equity here, there, and all that kind of stuff. And so we put it in and we get the rate. And all of a sudden, this whole mezzanine vehicle started coming around. And then all of a sudden, the developers were not bringing in their family friends or their families with the big money or this, and they started to bring in this third-party money. And that's when things really got hot. And that's when, you could see that this thing was now is going to go a little shaky here because of the fees, etc. And so I ended up taking these developers, and one guy, for example, had never built a high-rise building, and after 3 years I had him $650 million.
I wish I would have known you then.
And, but remember what I told you beforehand. I had you an application.
Oh, that's right.
With no guarantees. No personal guarantee.
Too many spelling mistakes in the
So, yeah. So, it was, and I was able to do that because even though he didn't know how to build, you had to address those segments in the market. On the lending side, you have to mitigate the factors that the lenders were looking for. And so I went through and I had an incredible run. And unlike the last time when all the commitments were canceled and my deals didn't get built, I was able to participate and be hired and do the work out on the high-rise after they went down the drain. So I caught a little bit of this way, and then I got a little bit of that way. And that was very interesting because now I did both sides of it again.